going to go ahead and get started while everyone's undressing up here. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay, great. I think we mistitled it in the program because it's not really what it looks like. I'm just going to tell you what we've been doing, and everyone in this room is going to,
I'm going to interrupt her for a second because who doesn't like popcorn? So Dusky, Estes, and John Stewart from Black Pig Meat Company came up and has some caramelized bacon popcorn we'll be passing around. So you guys get to pay attention to this fascinating speech.
Yeah. All right, I know everyone's more excited about popcorn. But what I want to show you and talk about, and I'll try and do it quick because the conversations that we're going to have together in this room is really about shaping how are we going to make this happen. I just want to talk briefly about what we've learned about what's currently happening and where some of the kind of key challenges and pinch points are that we've all been talking about. Just to give you some background, we've mentioned this is a project that was funded by the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service Program. The formal title is up here, really about creating high-value markets for California small and mid-scale meat producers. But right now, we're focused on this institutional piece, and as Michael had mentioned, there'll be some steps that go beyond this as we grow. But here's what we've done so far and where we are. So the goals of the original project were, very, very big, very simple, but very hard to do, as we all know, which is, make greater local and regional access to these high-value, regenerative, local markets and increase profits for our farmers and ranchers. Really explore what the viable business models are that'll make these systems thrive and grow. And then enable the supply to go where it needs to go. So have these products flow into the markets in our local regions as, at scale. So that's, very simple goals we set out for ourselves for a 3-year project. We acknowledge that, this is a path and it's a journey, but it's basically building on all of the actions that have and progress that has gone so far. It's an opportunity to think about really scaling some of these things. So what we've learned through a lot of these conversations, we've had, I think, 8 regional meetings around California, and most of them in person, a couple Zooms, definitely hard for people to travel. And with mostly producers and a bunch of processors as well. But kind of what we know, but what's really been reinforced is that there's so much capacity to grow product, but it's the steps in between that are really the hard part. And in particular, it's kind of the current business models that'll have to be changed along the way. Like, for example, most of the cattle production in the state, most people are cow-calf. They sell the calves off, they never see them again. And so how do you increase finishing in local regions and connect that into the markets so that, not every cow-calf operator is going to want to finish their animals, but maybe somebody else in the community can. So, there's a ton of capacity. How do we reshape it so that is producing the finished products to be consumed locally? The start of this journey really was a report we did, a white paper coming out of the COVID-19 epidemic, and looking at some of the challenges that had really been highlighted, systemic challenges, but COVID really shined a light on some of them, and particularly kind of the bottlenecks in meat supply chains. And so our group, UC Davis, Roots of Change, IC Foods, did an analysis of, what's the meat supply chain in California really look like? And the first thing we learned was that information is really hard to find. Nobody really knows all the pieces and how it fits together. Everyone knows their own operation. But that, as I think probably everyone in this room knows, the slaughter and processing piece is so important, and that the capacity in the state has declined dramatically. And so reinforcing that, building it up, is going to be a huge part of the solution. But also, where we are now, figuring out how to use what we currently have more effectively is kind of the first step. And then again, it's all about information, collaboration, and working together. And then again, I think we've heard this, my last point on this slide, which is just, we know that building and growing our regional regenerative agriculture community is win-win-win across the board. It's good for producers, it's good for the environment, it's good for local economies, and it's also good for the health of the people eating the food. And so particularly one of the kind of very early partners that's in the process was Santana Diaz. You'll hear his name over and over today from the UC Davis Medical Center. And they're coming to this conversation from the perspective of the healthier produced products are healthier for people. And so, you know, a lot of us here are entering it from the economic and productive level. He's saying, no, the human health level is super important as well. And so being able to have kind of one vision that hits all of these points simultaneously is a huge win. And so again, that's, I think, why a lot of us are here today, to try and see if we can make these big wins, you know, continue to grow. So anyway, that's a quick background. Looking at numbers, because some of us are university people and we like data. So in that conversation that we've been having with everyone, I think we've talked at these meetings with about 200 producers, and about 100 of your ranches have filled out the survey, giving us information about, you know, what's being grown where, what's being finished where. So this map on the left is kind of plopping animals down in the places where we've heard from people, and there's a lot of those animals being produced. And then also on there, you'll see the caps are the universities and the H's are the university hospitals. And so, I mean, you'll note that our focus, right, with this project, it's 3 years. It's not the giantest project in the world. We're really focused on Northern California and the producers in Northern California. I mean, there's going to be opportunities to grow across the state at some point. Right now, this is where we've really focused our efforts. And then the map on the right is showing you, and this is from what we've heard from the surveys we've received from everyone in this room, of the density of this is the cattle piece. So you'll see that North State produces a lot of cattle, and you'll also notice that there aren't a whole lot of slaughter. This is slaughter facilities here. There aren't a whole lot of slaughter facilities in that part of the state. And if you look at the Redwood Coast region, there's one, and they're pretty landlocked. And so that one slaughter facility is hugely important. And actually, they've been part of our conversation as well. And so just getting a visual print of thinking about, you know, where we need to think about growing capacity, this is really important. And they're a little hard to see, but the blue ones are the USDA ones, which, you know, to go into an institutional system, it has to go through that kind of a process. But the green dots are the CDFA inspected facilities. And so just thinking about what we have, what capacity there is to grow, I mean, maybe transitioning some of the CDFA facilities into USDA is a starting point. That's just, I'm throwing that out there as an idea that's been floated around quite a bit, but at least they're businesses and skilled staff that are already in operation, and it's not starting from the ground up with, you know, locations and permitting process and financing and the whole works. But anyway, just some numbers to look at here. And well, let me back up 1 second. So back to the surveys. So we've heard the number 600,000 meals a day is what's served by the UC system. We don't know how many of those are meat, but there's always a protein source involved in there. So there's a lot of meat involved. The capacity that we've received from, that we've learned about from the people that we're already speaking with, the 100 farmers and ranchers that have responded, the numbers we're looking at is about 20,000 head of cattle that are finished in this region per year on average right now. So that's a lot of cattle. And actually, you'll even notice kind of as we flow into the reception, there's going to be a carving example of 1/4 of a cow. That's a lot of meat. So thinking about how far that stretches, I actually don't have the numbers worked out, but it's a nice sample to start with in building and expanding the system. So already in our conversation, about 20,000 head of cattle. And then we have a lot more reach with the cattle producers and the others, but from that group, we have, I think, about 3,000 head each of talking with us, sheep, hogs, turkeys, and poultry. We know there's a lot more poultry. We haven't reached into that community very well yet. And then about 550 head of goats, I think. And so actually, in particular, when we're thinking about multi-use, carbon stocks, grazing, I know goats are really high on the list of productive animals there. I know even the freeways around the Bay Area have the grazing goats that come in. So, you know, all these multi-use, multi-benefit pieces that we can think about. And then also just thinking about, she mentioned that the halal purchasing, so, some of the different sheep, goats are super popular and in demand from some of the halal and kosher communities. So just, thinking about how we tie all these pieces together, multiple benefits, and then scale it up. And then, again, coordination with SURF, especially when we're talking about building capacity, putting in investments into the slaughter and processing kind of choke points that we know we have. It's something that we really want to make sure we do because, it's a great opportunity and resource for us to connect with. And then this is another map of the slaughter facilities superimposed on the SURF regions, the 6 regions that are kind of active in our project, 6 of the 13. And then also just noting that not only we've pointed the slaughter facilities, but we've also coded them. So the ones that are red are the ones that only manage their own brands. And so for the small scale producers, they're not accessing those, right? And the yellow ones are ones that, well, actually, I know up there, Keith, we have you as yellow, you should be green. But, we weren't able to get a hold of everyone because, the information isn't visible. You have to either have a relationship or you have to call and get a hold of somebody, right? It's not all easily accessed. So anyway, so that's where we are on our process. Just thinking about as where we're going with this project, 3-year project, we're about halfway through. This first phase is really focusing on everyone in the room, scaling up some of these, existing programs that have been super successful. Some of the next steps that we'll be talking with folks about in the next year, and I think early next year we're planning to have another event really focused on retail butchers, so kind of the higher value cuts. This first piece is looking at the lower end cuts that the institution needs. And then also kind of how do we engage with some of the specialty markets, the kosher, the halal, the ethnic groups, because there's definitely, from a producer standpoint, will be a really marketable group to connect with. So that's where we are on what we're doing with this project. And now we really want to turn to the reason we brought you all here today, which is we have this incredible group of people in the room, and all of you have things that you've done that have been successful, and you know where some of those pinch points are that we really need to work through. And so we've got kind of a series of conversations that we're going to have together, and Michael will lead you through those. But now we get to learn from each other, kind of everybody in the room. So thank you.